everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and welcome back to another Professional Genealogist Reacts. On today's video, I will be reacting to I uploaded my DNA to Genomelink, My True Ancestry, GEDmatch, Promethease, and Genetic Lifehacks by UsefulCharts. Now this is video 3 that we've reacted to from UsefulCharts of his DNA quest. For those who don't know, I've been tracing the family tree of Matt Baker from UsefulCharts and did a whole bunch of videos about it. I'm still actually researching into a few different lines, so expect more videos down the line. But I'm excited for this video because he's going into a lot of websites that I actually have never really dealt with that much. A big part of it being that most of them don't have things that are genealogically useful. The whole point of what I do is for genealogy, and stuff that really doesn't tie into the genealogy I don't focus on as much. So it will be kind of cool to see what he thinks of some of these and if there is anything that maybe they have offered over the years that I've missed out on. That's all I'm going to say before the video, but before we do jump in, please be sure to give this a like. Really does help me out. Also be sure to subscribe and click that bell for notifications on future videos. With all that fun stuff said, let's go ahead and jump into the video.
Hi, this is Matt Baker. Today I'm going to show you 5 websites that I uploaded my DNA to, and that you can upload yours to as well. These companies don't send you a kit. The assumption is that you've already tested your DNA somewhere else, and that you simply want to upload your already existing DNA file in order to receive additional information beyond what you have already received. So the websites that we'll be looking at today are Genomelink, My True Ancestry, Genetic Lifehacks, Promethease, and GEDmatch.
Now, of these 5, I will say that GEDmatch is the only one that I have extensive experience with. I did a little bit of stuff with Promethease years ago. I don't even know if it's still the same type of website. From what I remember, Promethease was like health stuff. But when it comes to GEDmatch, that's kind of like a staple with the genetic genealogy community, and especially in investigative genetic genealogy.
So the first site I want to talk about is called Genomelink. So you can see here that they give you a basic breakdown of your ancestry. But since you've already tested your DNA, you probably already know that by now. The new information you're going to get is in the traits section. Here they give you about 50 traits for free. There's some information about how well you absorb certain vitamins, as well as some information about your physical traits, personality, etc. If you want to get more trait information, you can use their streak feature. Basically, you just need to access their website at least once a week and provide at least one bit of feedback each week. So for example, Genomelink predicted that I have a stronger tendency to be extroverted. However, I'm actually more of an introvert, so I'm going to select no. If you keep doing this week by week, your streak goes up and you get access to more free traits. You can also simply pay $14 and get access to 200 more traits right away. And if you stay on one of their plans, you get new traits every week. Reports are a bit different. You have to pay separately for each one of these, and they range from around $20 to around $70. Let me show you a few that are available. This one's called the Global Ancestry Report, and it comes with some pretty cool graphics. You can spin the globe around and see all the various ethnicities that were found in your DNA. You can then learn about
Well, I want to look at what they gave him, because that's fun. Northwestern Europe, 33%, Eastern Europe, 22%. Actually, I don't know if this is Matt's actual results or if this is just a like sample page, because then it gets 20% Iberian, 15% Italian, 8% Near East, 2% Dravidian, 1% mainland East here. Yeah, and then 1% native peoples of Andes, 1% Scandinavian. I wonder if that's Matt's results or if that's something else. Comment below, let me know. What do you think?
Various ethnicities that were found in your DNA. You can then learn about each ethnicity and even see which of your chromosomes has DNA from that group. It's a great way to increase your knowledge of history and geography. There's also this ancient ancestry report that told me that most of my ancient ancestors were shepherds and farmers. And this Viking report that broke down my Viking ancestry into several subcategories. Okay, so the next site.
Yeah, so that one's not one that I would really use because there's nothing genealogically useful on that website. Interesting, and it sounds like if you're really into traits, that would be a good place to upload.
I want to show you is called My True Ancestry.
This is one people have asked me for years to look into, and my understanding is their big thing is the ancient DNA. So they have like a lot of results for different archaeological digs and different thousands of year old mummies and stuff, and they connect you to that. But yeah, the dig deep into your ancient ancestry thing. But yeah, I'm not genealogically useful.
Unique in that instead of comparing your DNA to large sample sets made up of various modern populations, which is what most DNA companies do, it instead compares your DNA to several people whose bodies have been found at various archaeological sites. So, for example, about 1,000 years ago, King Athelred the Unready of England ordered the execution of all Danes living in his kingdom. This led to an event known as the St. Brice's Day Massacre, in which 37 men were killed at a church in Oxford. Well, in 2008, the remains of those victims were found, and at least one had his DNA extracted and tested. My True Ancestry has over 500 such DNA profiles, ranging from the prehistoric Cheddar Man, who lived in 7150 BCE, to some poor bloke who died during the last major outbreak of the bubonic plague in Western Europe, which occurred in Marseille, France in 1720. So, using this method, My True Ancestry has determined that I am about 25% Frankish, which probably explains why I like Charlemagne so much. But as you can see, I've also got quite a bit of Celtic, as well as some Visigothic and Danish Viking. But here's what I find really cool. Instead of providing me with relative matches to living people, it provides me with matches to their archaeological samples. So, my top result is to a woman from Norway who died around the year 1200. She was one of the 3 skeletons found in Trondheim that were studied in 2017. The study showed that she died from a deadly pathogen found in her teeth. They even did a facial reconstruction and gave her the name Regna. Now, according to My True Ancestry, my DNA is 84% closer to Regna as compared to other users. They even show me the chromosomes where we share DNA in common and the length of the SNPs we share, measured in centimorgans. So once again, to use My True Ancestry, the first thing you need to do is upload your DNA. This site takes a little bit longer to analyze the results, about 10 to 15 minutes. But once things are ready, you can look at a few results for free. However, if you want to compare your DNA to more samples, you have to pay, and there are several tiers to choose from. Basically, the more you pay, the more ancient samples you get, as well as some extra tools. Okay, next up is
For My True Ancestry, that's one where I wouldn't do it. I mean, it seems like it'd be interesting. Maybe I would do it just to kind of try it out. I don't know. I mean, that kind of stuff's fun, but it's also like, I don't know. It's not genealogically useful. So, all right, let's continue. I see Andy Lee from Family History Fanatics. So I wonder which one. Oh, GEDmatch. Of course, yeah. So GEDmatch, if you go to their videos and stuff, they link to a whole bunch of the Family History Fanatics videos, which I'm sure a lot of people who watch my channels notice that I used to do tutorials and stuff, and then I kind of stopped it. Honestly, it was because I felt like Family History Fanatics and Genealogy TV, Lisa Louise Cook's Genealogy Gems, and Amy Johnson Crow's channel, like all these different channels do really, really great different type of tutorial stuff. I'll still do it from time to time, but that I like to focus more on the narrative and reaction and community type of stuff. But like I said before, GEDmatch is the only one of these tests that I really actually use all the time. At least it's the only one of these tests that I still use. The only other one that I had ever used was Promethease, but that was years ago, and I just like briefly used it. Like a couple of days I was checking it out.
If you're interested in finding as many relatives as possible, this is the one site that you absolutely need to upload your DNA to. Most of the main DNA testing sites give you relative matches, but unless you do every test from every company, you are going to be limited to only one database.
Not 100% true there. I get where he's coming from. Technically, yeah, but technically no. So MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, and Living DNA all allow uploads where you can then get into the database. So if you test a Family Tree DNA, if you test a MyHeritage, or if you test a Living DNA, or if you upload into those, you are technically only accessing that one database, but there are people in that database who have tested elsewhere other than just that database. Whereas GEDmatch, it's the same thing. The only difference is no one's testing through GEDmatch. It's just everybody's uploading. But it is not the only database where you can upload DNA. So I get what Matt's saying, but technically just a little wrong in that. Some of them, I think MyHeritage, you have to pay to get the access to the matches, and you've got to pay for the memberships to get the, high quality advanced stuff. But GEDmatch is definitely one that, like, if you're looking for matches, you're looking to do genealogy, GEDmatch is a great place to go because it is a place where you get a lot of these DNA tests from all the various databases beyond just your typical Ancestry, MyHeritage, and all of that. You're also getting a lot of these smaller tests that Matt's covered in some of these videos. Some of the international tests like Genera from Brazil, which is something that we were actually talking about recently in my Discord. Shout out to my Discord. I'm not sure if you can upload the DNA tests that are from like Asian-based stuff like 23 Mafong and WeGene, but I imagine you might be able to do that and be able to do matching and just basically you can upload from almost anywhere as long as you have a file that they can then read. You should hopefully be able to at least do some sort of matching. So very, very, very worthwhile.
GEDmatch helps solve this problem by being sort of a central database that everyone can add their DNA to.
Yeah, now looking over here on this column right here, I don't know if he's going to talk about it, but it shows you where these are all coming from. But you'll notice a lot of these migration, and what those stand for. When GEDmatch was changing things around, they had GEDmatch, and then they had a website called GEDmatch Genesis, where it was a whole bunch of updates, and people would upload their DNA to GEDmatch and GEDmatch Genesis, but then eventually they had a point where they then migrated over tests to GEDmatch Genesis. All that means is that was from the GEDmatch Genesis days. I don't know why I said that, but I just noticed that and felt like saying it.
Plus, it's free. Although, if you're a genealogy expert, you can pay extra to gain access to some advanced tools.
And it's not much for the advanced tools, and they're so worth it. They're so worth it. You get audio clusters. You get all sorts of special tools that no other websites have that are helpful in organizing and going more in depth into your segments and looking at how you're matching people, and just it gets really cool. Oh, and also you can create what's known as phase kits, and you can create all sorts of different types of kits. You can create Lazarus kits, which is like a kit where it's like trying to make somebody's DNA that isn't around anymore, and there's a lot of crazy, really cool stuff that you can do on GEDmatch.
The other great thing about GEDmatch is that it helps police to solve violent crimes. Now, when you sign up for GEDmatch, you now get the option to opt in or opt out of allowing the police to use your information.
And one thing I should say here is a big term that a lot of people in the genetic genealogy community use, or at least when investigative genetic genealogy really came out, they used, is informed consent. And so what they're saying here is that if you're going to opt in or opt out, be informed before you make that decision. Basically, go in, read the terms of service, understand what it is that you're going to be opting into, what it allows. I'm opted in. I help solve these. Oh, well, not help. I mean, I literally do the investigations for the genealogy and using GEDmatch, which we don't use GEDmatch for the investigations. We use their database, but we actually use a website called GEDmatch Pro, which is very similar, but not the same, and you have to have special access to it. But just understanding what you're getting into is just a good thing to do, and it's something that, if you're going to be doing stuff where you're putting your DNA in places, it's probably always a good idea to figure out the terms of service anyway.
So if you don't want them to use it, you can still upload to GEDmatch and maintain your privacy. However, if you are willing to help out, I personally think it's a great idea.
I should also note, he mentions opting in and opting out, but there's some other options that they have as well, because there are some people that want to use some of these tools on GEDmatch. So like one of the tools is, are your parents related? Where you just plug in your DNA kit and then it tells you based on that, basically it looks to see, are there a lot of moments of heterozygosity in your DNA? And, or not hetero, are there a lot of moments of homozygosity in your DNA? And if they're finding a large amount of that in specific ways, then they can figure out, oh, okay, this person's parents may actually be related. And other tools where it doesn't have anything to do with the DNA matching. And because of that, GEDmatch has an option where you can either opt in for the law enforcement, where basically anyone that gets into the database is going to be able to see your DNA kit. You can opt out, which just means that people that are trying to identify their families are going to see your DNA kit. Or you can do a private research option, which is basically your DNA is in the database, but nobody is going to be able to find it. But the reason you would do that is so that you can use some of these tools in the database without having the genetic matching part. For anyone that wants to have access to a lot of these really cool tools, but doesn't want to be found in any sort of way, you can still do that. So let's continue.
Basically, if one of your relatives commits a serious crime but doesn't have their DNA in any public database, the police are still able to find you and through you find the culprit. But don't worry, you're not going to get blamed for a crime that one of your cousins committed. Investigators will be able to tell that you are a close familial match to the criminal, but not the actual criminal.
At most, what will happen if you do get contacted by a law enforcement agency, if you've uploaded your DNA, is they're just going to be asking you about what you know about your family tree. And if they have done research into the tree already, they may come to you with relatives where they're going to ask you about those relatives, although that's not quite as likely. Usually it's more of like they'll show a family tree and ask about certain things. So like for a lot of unidentified cases, they may go to a match, especially if they're close enough, and sit down with them and talk to them about their family and go over what they know about the family tree to see, is there any part of the family that maybe ties into that case? Sometimes you may get law enforcement coming to you to ask for help in getting other cousins to test what's known as target testing. Basically, they know that you're a DNA match, but they're not quite sure where in your family tree this suspect is, or if they're trying to identify unknown human remains. They can then basically get a target test to help figure out, is that the right side of the family? Is that the wrong side of the family? And if it is the right side, how close are we? And target testing is a technique that we've used in regular genetic genealogy for years, but it is very useful for investigative genetic genealogy. Let's continue.
All right, we're now going to shift the focus from genealogy to health. In a previous video, I talked about Nebula, a company that sequences your entire genome and then links your genes to genes discussed in scientific studies as potentially impacting disease risk. Well, a low-cost alternative to Nebula is a site called Promethease. The main difference being that Promethease only looks at some of your DNA, as opposed to all of it. But it works in a somewhat similar manner. Once you upload your DNA, which you have to obtain from another testing company, such as MyHeritage, you have to pay $12. Then you get a screen that looks like this. Simply click on the three dots and select View Report. Now, the amount of information that Promethease gives you can be a bit overwhelming and potentially even a bit scary. But just keep in mind that being at an increased risk for a disease doesn't mean that you're actually going to get it. So for example, the report says that I have a 2 times risk of Alzheimer's. Well, the average risk of getting Alzheimer's at age 65 is 2%, which means that my risk is 4%. But to put it another way, there's still a 96% chance that I'm not going to get it. Now, if you do have any rare genetic diseases, Promethease is likely to find them. For example, it found that I have the genes for alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Now, I already knew that from some of the other tests that I took, but it is useful to know. If I had been a smoker, I definitely need to consider quitting. However, luckily, I've never even puffed a cigarette once, so although I did tell my doctor about this result, which led him to run some extra lung tests on me, so far everything seems to be okay.
Now, that's one thing that I should also say with this DNA testing, if you're doing it for the health and medical stuff, is that don't take any of this at face value. For one, if it says no variants detected or anything like that, you can't just be like, oh, I'm off the hook, don't have it, no worries. It's just saying, based on the studies and what they know, they aren't sure. On the flip side, if it says that you do have something, you can't just be like, oh, well, I have it, you know? Even if you do have like a high risk and this says high risk of anything, what you then need to do is just take that information, like Matt said, to your doctor and discuss it further with them, because then they'll be able to either refer you to a specialist if there's something that you do need to look further into. They might be able to order specific types of blood or DNA testing for you that can then look further into that type of stuff. And that way you can get the proper medical diagnosis as opposed to just this, which, yeah, it can give you an idea, but this is not anywhere near a medical diagnosis, and this is not anything to take at face value. This is just something that is giving a good estimate that is interesting and may give you something to then look further into properly.
Now, there are a lot of settings on this report that you can play around with, but one that I want to point out is the sample population. It has defaulted me to Caucasian, which means that it's comparing my disease risk to that of other Caucasians. However, you can change this to African American, Asian, or a few other possibilities. If your ethnicity is not on the list, you can just select average from all populations. Okay, the last site I want to show you is called Genetic Lifehacks. It's actually a blog run by an educator named Debbie Moon, and it has lots of great articles about health-related matters and how they relate to genetics. You can read the articles for free, but if you sign up for a membership, which costs $8 per month, it will customize every article.
See, I have to say, for me, a lot of this stuff just does not seem worth the cost. I don't know. I mean, I just don't see how, this would be that helpful. I don't know. Let's keep watching.
So that your genotype is shown at the bottom. Of course, the first thing you need to do is upload your DNA, but that only takes a few seconds. So for example, here's a recent article about long COVID, a topic that's on many people's minds these days. Now, obviously, the research on long COVID is in the very early stages, and the author is careful to point that out. But she does talk about some possible genes that might play a role, such as the MTHFR gene, which helps the body process folate. If you have an atypical version of this gene, your ability to process folate is decreased, which might make you more likely to get long COVID. I signed up for a membership, so the article automatically tells me that my genotype for MTHFR is GG, which is typical. However, if you get AG or AA, you might be at a higher risk. Once again, though, keep in mind that higher risk doesn't automatically mean that you're definitely going to get such and such a disease. Often, the increased risk is very small, and usually there are multiple genes involved in each disease process. So be sure to bear these things in mind when you look at your results. Another neat feature of this website is their cheat sheet, which you can get for $45. It comes with an annual membership, so it's a good way to sign up for the whole site. What you get is a 64-page cheat sheet with all your genetic variants listed, along with links to relevant articles. It's color-coded, so you can easily find the genes that put you at risk, the ones marked in red being the most important. So, for example, I noticed a red box here, indicating that I am at an increased risk for autoimmune diseases. If I click the link, I can go straight to the article about that and get some life hacks on what I can do to counteract my genes by making a few small changes to my diet. Okay, so that was a look at 5 different websites you can upload your DNA to.
All right, well, that was a pretty decent video. I do enjoy Useful Charts videos, but with this one being a bunch of sites where I was like, I wonder if there's going to be something that'll intrigue me, it really just hit home as to why I don't use any of these companies other than GEDmatch. I totally get why people find the medical stuff and the trait stuff, all of that interesting and useful. It's just, for me, I don't know. I guess I already have access through a good amount of that now through, websites like Nebula and this, I've done 23andMe, and then a bunch of the other websites that I'm on, I think have health stuff that I could buy if I wanted. But I know that also it just comes down to, okay, well, we're going to see, do you have that variant at the expected spot? And then for the stuff like Genomelink and My True Ancestry, I really wasn't that intrigued either. Honestly, I guess out of all of these, not considering GEDmatch, because that one, that's the only good one out of these 5 in my opinion. But out of all of these, the only one that I guess I had a little bit of intrigue into looking into further was My True Ancestry, just because it's like, oh yeah, that is kind of cool to see how many centimorgans do you share with these different archaeological sites and these different ancient peoples and all of that, and just kind of seeing that sort of a thing, but none of it's genealogically relevant. I was a little disappointed at how little Matt did go into GEDmatch, because one of the beauties about GEDmatch is that there is so much available and there's just so many advanced tools. And I mean, he did kind of say, if you're trying to do genealogy, this is the place you want to get into. But it would have been cool for him to kind of cover just a few more of the things, but a few more of the tools that are available in GEDmatch and, what it does that especially a lot of the other sites don't even offer or have available. I do hope that Matt continues this series and starts to do even more DNA tests, because one of the things that he hasn't done, and I think this would be super interesting to do, is getting DNA tests from a lot of the national tests or the international tests that aren't as well known. So some examples are the ones that I mentioned, like GenEra from Brazil, WeGene from Asia, and 23 which I believe is in China based. And then I'm sure there's other different DNA companies based throughout the world that aren't really as well known, and it'd be really interesting to see. Maybe some of them have some really interesting tools or some really good insights that the others don't. But I guess I should say that I know that he is continuing this series at the very least, because one of the videos he'll be doing is DNA tests for African Americans, because he'll be looking at the results for Jabari Walker, and that will actually be a collaboration with me, because I'll be doing Jabari Walker's family tree. For anyone not familiar with Jabari, he is the host of From Nothing, which is an amazing YouTube channel about African history. So definitely a lot to look forward to, especially for people looking to learn more about African American ancestry, as well as genetic genealogy for African Americans. But if you'd like to check out something now that deals a bit with African American DNA, be sure to check out this video right here. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. That really does help me out. You can also click right about here if you'd like to subscribe. It is completely free to do so. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram at GenieVlogger. I'm the Genie Vlogger. See you in my next video.